Hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Sarah. I'm a museum educator at Penobscot Marine Museum. I want to give a big thank you to our members and those of you who chose to donate to support our programming at Penobscot Marine Museum. We really appreciate it. More information about the upcoming speakers, membership, and donating can be found on our website and our Facebook page. This programming has been made possible in part by the National Endowment for the Humanities, exploring the human endeavor. Today, we're going to look at a couple of paintings from our collection. Please post below your questions and comments. We love hearing from you. This is one of the paintings in our collection. Let's look closely at this. We have two ships, brigs to be specific. Brigs have two masts and square sails. This looks like an exciting action shot. Both brigs are sailing fast. The one in front has a ripped sail. Sailors are climbing up to take the ripped sail in. Sailors below, you can tell they're busy sailing the ship in this emergency. The skies look dark and cloudy. The ship in the back has a British flag. So if we zoom really far in, the other surprising thing in this image are Africans lining the windward side of the ship, stabilizing it as they make this swift turn. So we have a British naval vessel pursuing a slaver. The slaver is a Baltimore Clipper ship. Now, you already know that enslaved Africans were taken from their homes and families and brought to the Americas on ships. But let's briefly go over this horrific piece of history. Captured in raids, marched long miles to shore, led by the thousands into jails. Africans were sold to English, French, Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese, and other Europeans. They were packed like sardines on these ships. You've probably seen the iconic image of Africans packed onto the ship Brooks of England. They were on these ships for weeks, sometimes months, no bathrooms. Seasickness and disease were rampant. Sometimes forced feeding and forced dancing were used to try to keep them healthy. All the while headed to a lifetime of servitude with cruel and torturous physical punishments and unceasing mental manipulations in an attempt to keep them there because, of course, Africans resisted at every opportunity. Singbe Pieh and other Mende Africans took the schooner Amistad that they were being carried on, turned it back towards Africa. One of the former mates in the night secretly turned it towards the US, but US courts eventually decided to let Singbe Pieh and the rest return home. But despite these heroic efforts, over a couple of centuries, over 12 million individuals were brought by force to the Americas, and every one of them has a personal story. I'll tell you about a couple of these individuals.
Sarah, just to jump in right here, we have a nice audience watching you today, and a special hello to Frank and John. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for being with us here today with Penobscot Marine Museum. We're looking at a painting from our collection of a British naval vessel pursuing a slaver. Maine's known slaver history starts in 1605 with George Weymouth, who kidnapped 5 Native Americans and took them back to England. In fact, New England sold hundreds of thousands of Native Americans into slavery in the Caribbean, which we don't often talk about. When we think of enslaved Africans, we often think of the South, but New England was importing Africans early on. For example, Sarah Peters from Guinea in West Africa. She was brought to Maine by Captain Brown of Damariscotta and sold into slavery. In the years leading up to the Revolutionary War, Massachusetts, of which Maine was part at that time, was working on writing a new constitution for freedom and equality. So Sarah Peters hired a lawyer. She went to court and she successfully sued for her freedom. She started a family with Amos Peters in Maine, Warren, Maine, in 1784. Amos Peters had been enslaved in Andover, Mass, and freed himself by fighting in the Revolutionary War. This family grew and drew others to the area, and together they became a sizable community of African Americans that lived in Warren for over a century. Maine has multiple ties to the economics of slavery. The land that our own museum is on was purchased by Samuel Waldo, a part owner of a slave ship named Africa. He used the money he earned from the slave trade to buy land in Maine, such a large piece of land that it went all the way from Penobscot River to Muscongas Bay. Maine's economy tied to the sea included fishing and shipping. So salt cod was sold in the Caribbean to feed enslaved Africans, and ships built here in Maine were used to transport enslaved people. This is another image, another painting from our collection. It's the Brig Kentucky. This is a watercolor. The brig was built right here in Searsport, Maine by J. Carver. Written on back of this painting is, quote, built for Captain Benjamin Carver, 1833. Sailed by him for 10 to 12 years, then went into the slave business from Africa to Rio de Janeiro. Now, an agreement between the US and several European countries in 1807 had made transporting slaves illegal, but that did not necessarily stop people from continuing this practice. And 5 million Africans were taken to Rio de Janeiro alone. One of the Africans brought to Brazil was Pedro Tovookan Parris. He was captured at age 10 when a raid surprised his village in the night. He describes his grandmother screaming after him as he was carried away. After a forced march for several weeks, Tevuken was sold to a Portuguese trader, then to a trader from Brazil. Branded, enslaved, Tevuken traveled to Rio de Janeiro in January of 1845 aboard the Porpoise, a brig built in Brunswick with Captain Cyrus Libby of Scarborough. But the crew of the Porpoise was shocked to find out what they had been hired for. And as soon as they arrived in Brazil, reported Libby's illegal trade. During sworn testimony, Tevuken, remember, age 10, was asked where he wanted to go. He asserted, "I desire to be a freeman and to go to the United States." Virgil Parris, a US Marshal involved in the trial, hired Tevuken, took him to Maine, and arranged for schooling. So let's go back to the painting, the original painting, and to Gina.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. We don't have any current questions, but if you do have a question, please post it in the comments and we will answer it for you.
Okay, there we go. So the artist of this painting is Ebenezer Poulson. Ebenezer Poulson was a seafarer. In fact, he may have been an officer in the British Navy. We think he retired from the Navy, and then in his retirement went into painting. I'm entertained by his advertisement in the local Liverpool paper. Ebenezer Poulson, late of Wapping, London, having drifted from his moorings, has brought himself to an anchor in Liverpool, where he intends exercising his art in marine painting. Let's go back to the painting itself. So being in the Navy, or at the very least a seaman, Poulson very likely saw scenes exactly like the ones he painted. In 1808, right after that agreement about not bringing Africans to the Americas anymore, the British Royal Navy created the West Africa Squadron. A surprising amount of resources were spent on it, considering Britain was at war with France, and you assume they wanted the ships for their war with France. But after the British victory in 1815, which also ended the War of 1812 between Britain and the US, they re-agreed to not ship Africans. And additional agreements were made with France and Spain and several European countries. So after the war was over, more resources and ships were available to go to this project. Now, of course, as soon as British Navy started hunting down slavers built faster ships like the Baltimore Clippers, like the one in this image here. But at least one of those Baltimore Clippers was captured by the West Africa Squadron, and then used to capture as many as 11 other slavers in one single year. By about 1850, 25 vessels, including steamships, were employed in the effort, including about 1,000 African fishermen as well. So stories of these captures were very popular. They were printed in newspapers, and then prints of the action shots like this and paintings like this one were made, and they were very popular and sold widely. It's kind of like our action movies today. So in conclusion, when we talk about stories of slavery, what blows me away is the amazing resilience of the African diaspora. White slavers purposefully worked to erase Africans' language, culture, and original names. Yet, despite the ongoing oppression over the centuries by people in power, African Americans, Caribbeans, and Afro-Latinos have preserved a connection to their roots and created a vibrant culture which enriches the world and all of us in it. 20 minutes is not near enough time to do this topic justice. But we had to try. We had to talk about this difficult history. I want to know what you think. Please leave comments, post them below. Tell us how we can make our talks better. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sarah?
Yes.
Hello to Elizabeth, who just joined us. But again, before we sign off, can you take us on a detailed trip, zoom in for us again? I love the image of the men up in the rigging.
Yes. Picture being a sailor climbing 100 feet up into the air. The rigging could be slippery from rain. The weight of that canvas, grappling with it, trying to pull it in. I don't know how they did it. I love also the crew down here is very diverse, which was common on ships. Ships are going all over the world. And every time they go into a port, if they've lost a sailor to disease or falling from the 100-foot up high yards, they took on new crew from every port that they entered. So from Asia, from South America, from Africa, these crews ended up being more diverse than the communities that the ships came from.
And hello to Waterfall Arts and Katie. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you again so much to everyone who joined us today. We're so grateful. We can't open our museum in the way that we usually do. And we are trying to bring our museum to you. And I'm so glad that you're taking advantage of that and joining us and taking a look at some of our paintings.
Sarah, we have a quick question,
yes.
Maybe. Is there a record of the number of slaves that were on this vessel?
We don't know what this vessel is. I wish so much that I knew what it is. It has this interesting figurehead, which maybe someday can be used to identify it. But we don't know either the names of these vessels. We know that many of the ships carried from 100 to 300 Africans. We are here every Friday at noon in July, and we hope very much that you'll join us again next week at Penobscot Marine Museum's Facebook page. Thank you very, very much.